Where do I even start with the ounce? I can start at the beginning and talk about how I first saw the ounce at SHOT Show 2022 and was hooked. I'm a weird gun aficionado and knew I had to have one. I signed up for the waiting list and boy did I wait. Now a little over 3 years later, the ounce is finally in my hands. It's kind of like waiting for a child to be born, except this one's a lot louder and I don't have to pay for its college. The ounce from Third Bay redefines the idea of a deep concealment firearm. It's named the ounce not because it weighs an ounce, actually it weighs 7 ounces. It's named after the Benjamin Franklin quote, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." The idea behind the ounce is simple. Let's create a gun that's extremely easy to carry and extremely easy to shoot. The idea is to provide a firearm for people who aren't gun people necessarily. It's designed from the ground up to be extremely easy to use, regardless of how weak or strong your hands are. I'm still kind of deciding where do I start with this thing. The ounce is a lot of things, and most of them are weird, which is fantastic. And if it's not weird, it's good, which is again fantastic. So let's start with this. The ounce is a folding pistol. The frame, barrel, and magazine all fold into the pistol grip. And this creates something that resembles like a vape.
Vape Nation.
Or something. It doesn't really matter what it looks like when it's folded. What matters is that it doesn't look like a gun. It looks pretty dang far from a gun. There's no visible barrel, no visible trigger, just a weird, angular, blocky thing. When folded, the ounce is completely safe to carry. We don't need a holster for this thing, so the trigger's completely covered. That's great, but when folded, the firing pin is also not aligned with the cartridge, so if for some reason it falls, it doesn't strike the cartridge, so it can't fire when folded. Now, if you still have your, tethers in a bit, you can carry this with the chamber empty and have no worries. If you set it up properly, unfolding the gun also loads the chamber. So while you're carrying empty chamber, you're not really trying to put your seatbelt on before the car crashes. So the kind of lever action grip cocking design means there is no need to rack a slide, which is an advantage for low strength shooters. Alright, so it's a folding gun. That's not the only weird thing about this gun. It's also a bullpup. This isn't the first bullpup pistol, but bullpup pistols are all kinds of weird. The magazine isn't behind the trigger, just the action. The magazine sits above the trigger, and above the barrel, and above the action. That's right, it's a top-mounted magazine, kind of like a Calico or a P90. Except this magazine's integral and not removable. And you load it by opening a small door and just kind of dropping rounds into the gun. So yeah, the magazine is also weird. Most magazines have a body, which is that little metal outside portion, a spring, and that spring presses a follower. That's not the case here. The magazine consists of a ratchet and a transporter. The action of the gun feeds rounds into the transporter, which loads the chamber, and then, you pull the trigger and the gun fires. So the good part about this is that the magazine requires 0 hand strength to load. And it also holds 10 rounds of .22 long rifle. So, to keep things weird, this isn't a blowback operated firearm. Most semi-auto .22 long rifle firearms are blowback operated. In fact, every semi-auto .22 long rifle I know of is a blowback operated design. Well, everyone but the ounce. The ounce uses a long recoil system, much like a Browning Auto 5. This means we have a locked breech, which has 2 major benefits. First, there's even less recoil from the already nearly recoil-free .22 long rifle. Second, safety. The gun is less likely to fire out of battery. The long recoil system means the barrel and bolt reciprocate together until they bottom out. At that point, the barrel moves forward again and the bolt remains at the rear. This causes the spent case to eject, which, with the ounce, ejects downward through the hollow grip. If a case somehow gets stuck in the grip, the shooter can use a small red shelf to manually push the shells out. So in all my shooting, I actually never had to do that. In fact, I tried to stage it over and over again to kind of show you on video, and that was also very difficult. Now, with that said, the last little details about the ounce before you go to the range is that it's hammer fired, which seems to be kind of necessary to make sure rimfire .22 LR actually ignites and is a reliable system. Alright, before we start shooting, let's talk about ergonomics. So the grip of this gun is hollow and feels kind of weird when it's deployed. As you imagine, when you deploy the frame, the barrel, and the magazine, the grip is left feeling just a little bit flexible. And I don't really like that flex. and every so often a hot ejected case will hit your hand and give you just a little bit of sting. My only real complaint about this gun is this grip design. It just feels a little flimsy, but to be perfectly honest, it never detracted from the gun's performance. I still wish it was just a little stiffer, maybe just so when I got a nice tight grip I didn't feel insecure about it. Besides that, the gun's ergonomics are fine. There isn't much to say about the gun ergonomically. The only controls are the lever action designed to load the gun and the trigger. There's no side lock, no manual safety, no magazine release, nothing really like that. With that said, if you're an experienced shooter, the gun won't feel intuitive. It's such an odd design, and the fact that it lacks a slide to rack, a magazine to insert, or buttons or levers to press kind of leaves the gun feeling a little bit odd. Most shooters can take a gun out of the box and figure it out. That's not the case with the ounce. With the ounce, you have to read the manual, or better yet, watch the numerous videos on the ounce website. Third Bay's put out a lot of great videos on how to use this gun, and you really need to watch those videos before you start shooting this thing. Now, with that being said, if we account for the odd design, it's not that tough to use. It takes a little practice to get the loading and chambering aspect down, but it's not overly difficult. It probably doesn't take really that much more practice than using a standard gun. It's just so different. It feels less intuitive from the standard, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means you have to put the effort in to learn how to use the ounce. Now, one of the more clever things Third Bay did was use a color scheme to tell you which way to point the gun when you operate it. Red means that's the way the barrel points, so when you unfold it, you want to keep the red portion pointed away from you. Blue means safe, and that means you can have that portion pointed at you. So the lever to unlock the gun is blue, the lever to fold the gun is green, and if you can memorize primary colors, you can operate the ounce. So if you get this gun, a career as a preschool teacher is basically a lock. Now, taking the gun apart isn't difficult necessarily, but again, you have to watch those videos and it takes practice. I filmed an entire segment of me taking the gun apart, but I felt like it dragged the review down. I can't do stuff like that through a camera lens, and the video is just terrible. Third Bay has much better videos on how to take it apart. If you really want to see me do it, I'll post a separate video and you can just, laugh at me and my frustration at trying to do this through a viewfinder. Alright, now that we're about 1,000 words into this thing, we can get to the range portion of the review. I was apprehensive about this gun. I spent $900 on it knowing that it could be a disaster. Weird guns are rarely good guns, and weird rimfire guns are, even more rare to be good guns. Does anyone remember the US FA Zip? I do, because I have one and carry the weight of its disappointment every day. After 3 years of waiting, I had my ounce. I loaded it up and I let it loose. My apprehension loosened as the first 10 rounds fired problem-free. And then so did the next 10 rounds, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and before I knew it, I had fired 300 rounds of CCI mini-mags through the gun, as well as 50 rounds of Blazer, 50 rounds of Federal Bulk Auto Match, and 50 rounds of Federal Punch without a single problem. The more I shot, the more excited I got. This weird little Bullpup 22 folding pistol was not a hunk of junk. I was very, very happy about that. Now, if you get one, you should definitely check out Third Bay's website, where they maintain a list of ammo that the ounce works best with. The general guidance comes down to using full-powered rounds, nothing subsonic, and the projectile should be heavier than 29 grains. They also advise you to avoid lead round nose designs to prevent lead buildup in the ounce. You can use it, and I did with the Blazer, but they advise you clean it thoroughly to avoid that lead buildup, which could cause malfunctions. With that said, the ounce is reliable, very reliable, surprisingly reliable. But some problems can be user-induced. More than once and less than 4 times, I didn't fully lock out the grip when I deployed the gun. It still fired, but the grip slipped after a shot or two. I had to stop, lock it out, and keep shooting. It's a bit like short stroking a pump shotgun. It's user-induced, but the design makes it more likely, especially when shooting fast. What really surprised me was the gun's accuracy. So the sights sit on top of the fixed magazine. They are small, all black, and don't contrast all that great. The short sight radius also doesn't do wonders or inspire confidence. With that said, the gun shoots straight. At 15 yards, I can make a fairly tight group inside an 8-inch circle. At 7 yards, I can put 10 rounds of 22 long rifle bulk into a 2-inch size dot, most of the time. At most, I'd miss the 2-inch dot once or twice. At 25 yards, I could hit a reduced-sized IPSC target most of the time, and against a full-sized IPSC target, I could hit it 100% of the time. 25 yards is pretty far for a concealed carry scenario, but I wanted to try it even further, so I went to 50 yards. Now, with that, at 50 yards, I hit that full-sized IPSC target like 4 out of 10 times, which is still kind of impressive for this micro-sized pocket pistol. Now, the trigger isn't the lightest, but it's crisp and short, just a bit heavy. Not bad by any means, and I think the biggest detractor to accuracy is the gun's small sights and short sight radius. But it's still more than adequate, especially for concealed carry. Honestly, it's exceptional for a gun this size. Recoil? Well, there's practically none. Seriously, the gun is incredibly easy to control. It doesn't recoil, it really just kind of burps. You can fire sub-second double taps from the low ready, with each round being well within an inch of each other. You know, I shot a 10-10-10 drill with all 10 rounds in the black in 2.87 seconds. I also shot a low ready bill drill that took less than 2 seconds. So that just tiny little bit of recoil means you can control this gun very easily and put a lot of rounds on target, which might be important when you're shooting something as meager as the 22 long rifle. Now that's all with the gun unfolded and ready to shoot. So what happens when you have to unfold the gun and get it into action? Well, that takes a little practice. The first time I tried it, I put the gun in my pocket, folded, drew, and fired all 10 rounds, and it took a little more than 5 seconds. It's a little too slow for me, so I practiced a little bit, and I was able to knock that down to about 3 seconds. Not great, but with practice, I think I can actually get it under 3 seconds, maybe at about 2.5. Now, the gun's promise of being easy to control with low hand strength is delivered upon. It is insanely easy to control. That little the long recoil system makes the gun feel... God, I really don't think I've fired a softer gun than this. I have a Beretta Jetfire and 22 short, and it might have as much recoil as this gun. So with that said, I think this might be one of the lowest recoiling semi-automatic pistols on the market, and it only weighs 7 ounces. What I like about the ounce is that I can drop it in my pocket and forget about it. I carried it at my day job today in my shirt pocket, and no one ever noticed. You could open carry this thing, if you're legally allowed to open carry, in your hand, and no one would know it was a gun. And that's a major benefit to the ounce's design. Now let's say you're walking through a parking garage or a dark alley, and someone starts to follow you for a little too long and a little too close. You can retrieve the gun. No one really sees a gun. They see this thing that looks like a vape. You know, if necessary, you can unfold it calmly, and before you get attacked or before, something really trips your spider sense, you can have a gun that's ready to get into action without causing any drama. The ounce is a very deep concealment friendly because it doesn't look like a gun. Now, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't carry in areas where I'm legally not allowed to. However, if a particular venue, store, or space doesn't allow carry, but I'm not breaking the law, then they can pound sand. If you're a concert with a no carry policy, well, you can go to hell. If you're a museum with a no gun sign, that's not my problem, because I have the ounce. And that's where guns like the ounce excel. It doesn't look like a gun, doesn't print like a gun, and carries with absolute ease. Plus, for the average non-gun person, the ounce presents an easy to conceal, easy to load, recoil-free option for self-defense. It's accurate enough, it's reliable enough, and with the right 22 long rifle round, you can get excellent penetration, deep enough to hit those vitals. Now, the 22 long rifle might not be optimum, but if you're a non-gun person, the ounce has a lot to offer. The price point might make it a tough way to enter the market. At $900, this is not a cheap gun, but this is, without a doubt, the most innovative firearm I've seen since I joined the industry a decade and some change ago. Now, if the ounce has tickled your fancy, check out the ounce website. Go to Third Bay and see what they have to offer you. It might not be for you, but the ounce is something that's truly innovative in a field of striker-fired polymer frame pistols. And I really think innovation should be celebrated in the firearms world. So with that said, I like the ounce. I like it a lot, and I don't regret spending $900 on it, which is kind of tough to say. However, I do want to know what you think. Is the gun overpriced? Would you carry a 22 long rifle? Is this fantastic folding pistol for you? Let me know below, and I really appreciate you guys watching. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.